Okay, I wanted to do a kind of a follow-up video, let you know where I'm standing on this floor. This is number 3. It's called industrial oak. Basically, it's a number 3 grade red and white mixed oak. So I've laid these floors. These bedrooms are done. I've done this in the past, but I found a gentleman on YouTube who does woodworking, who did his floor. And I was surprised because he did the same thing that I did about 10 years ago. I did this, but the majority of the boards I used were really damaged, if you want to consider, you know, the knots and holes to be damaged. But the majority of that floor was this, and then I laid a cross in the floor out of Purple Heart and lightly sanded that floor with a belt sander, only the high spots, and then stained it. And then, you know, put about 4 coats of clear on there, Minwax. But you got to epoxy these holes, because if you don't epoxy these holes, they're going to show up. So use a marine grade epoxy on these knots and the larger cracks that the clear coat finish isn't going to fill, right? And there was a gentleman that, what do you say, 55-gallon drums, like 10 of them? Yeah, like 10 55-gallon drums of shavings from a hand planer. No, I'm not that I'm not that adventurous on this floor. I'm sorry. It's not going to be cabinet grade flooring. It's going to be rustic. Okay. Amish rustic, like way old, like handsaw rustic. So that's what I'm shooting for here. So I'm not going to sand this floor. If you look at the floor, they did a pretty good job out of the mill. You know, I have no complaints with the milling on this floor, which I was quite surprised. The millwork on this floor was done well. These are just the rejects, so that weren't perfect. To me, perfect hardwood floor looks, to me, it looks, you know, laminate or fake. You want a floor to have character. You want someone to walk in my opinion. You want someone to walk in and look at your floor and in 2 seconds know that that's real wood. I mean, solid, real wood. So, so that's where I'm at. So I'm going to wind up taking this floor here in the next couple days, and probably next week, because I have to finish laying some more. I got to finish laying the hallway in here, and I got to finish laying this other room here, but these 2 rooms are done. You're looking at about, took me about 15 hours each room, taking my time, making sure my joints were pretty tight as the boards would allow, okay? Now you don't want to go too tight where you compress the wood so much that when it expands in the summertime, your boards will bow and it'll look terrible. You'll have, and when that happens in the summer, when your humidity builds up, if your floor is too tight, it's going to look like crap. It's going to wave, and you're going to have to take it down. Then you got to sand it. Then you got to rent a sander and a drum sander. You got to come in and then you got to sand the whole thing down. And it's just a nightmare. So when you're putting your floors down, don't get too tight. You want them snug, but you don't want them too tight where when that happens, you're going to have a problem. So wintertime, I think, is a good time to lay floors. The air is dry. The wood's kind of, dried out, condensed. In the summer, it will swell with the humidity. But I'd rather lay the floor being drier than humid, right? I'd rather have it swell a little bit, lay it down in the winter, and have it swell a little bit in the summer, and then leave it a little bit loose, not too loose, but you don't want it too tight. So, if that makes sense. So, the Banks pneumatic nailer turned out to be pretty good. I'm not complaining. Prior video, there was some a little bit of mix-up. Lumber Liquidators, I bought, of course, the flooring from Lumber Liquidators, and then I ordered, with the flooring, I ordered 8 boxes of staples, and they're supposed to all be 16 gauge, and the problem was half of them were 18 gauge, and I grabbed the 18 gauge box, which if you look at my first video where I'm nailing, there was a sticker placed over the gauge of it. And I wasn't paying attention, so when it gave me the box, somebody slapped a sticker over the gauge that of the 18 gauge, and then the other 3 boxes right on the top layer said 16 gauge. And I said, oh, well, they're all 16 gauge. I just assumed, my fault. And of course, I grabbed the box that had the sticker over the gauge size of the cleats, and I made a fool of myself. So, but you know what? I'm willing to learn from my mistakes, and I got no problem putting it out there. So, my bad. It's something that you just learn. You know, you can't make assumptions. You'd assume when you buy something that you'd get what you pay for and you'd get what you ordered, but double check your cleats, right? Enough on the cleats. So it's been a long day. I'm a little bit beat. Well, we got this cleaned up. What I want to try and go over is what I'm going to do to this floor. So the next process that I'm going to do, as I stated about 10 years ago, I did this. Ooh, we got a crack through the floor. See the white? Well, that sucks. But you know what? I'm glad we're here. So what I'm going to do is this going to get filled with epoxy, right? So these cracks and knots and impurities that we have in the floor are going to get filled. And it's going to take a long time to fill that one with epoxy. I'll have to use about 10 ounces probably. It drips under the floor and builds up. I like a challenge. So it winds up being that I did a floor like this about 10 years ago. I don't know if this is my 4th time trying to record this video, but I don't know if I got this in this session. So about 10 years ago, I ordered the same flooring from Lumber Liquidators of number 3 grade mixed red and white oak. And I took that and I used all the naughty boards and crack boards and boards like this. I wish I'd caught that before. I would have spray painted the back side of that. So I'm going to have to take a spray painter, a can of black spray paint, put a straw on it, and squirt some spray paint down in there because you'll see the white through the epoxy because I'm not staining the epoxy. Anyway, there's a tip for you if that happens to you. So what I did in the past, I laid that down and used marine grade epoxy and 3 coats into every knot and every large crack, right? So like this knot is not, right here is not, I'm not worried about that one, it's not enough. But like the larger knots, like this one, see this one's kind of deep, I don't know if you can see the angle. That one will get some. So every crack, knot, anything that's too large for the finished clear coat, like that one right there, is going to get 3 layers because you put down some epoxy, it hardens and shrinks. And then you put down some more, it hardens and shrinks. It's about 3 layers, 3 to 4. When I did it last, it was 3 times. There's a gentleman online that's done this. He's got a video on doing it, which I thought was unique. I mean, he did the same thing. He's doing the same thing or did the same thing to his floor that I did like 10 years ago on another floor that I had done in my other house. So when I get done with that, I'm going to wind up taking a planer and do what he did. Now before, when I did the last floor, I used a belt sander. This go round. But the belt sander leaves some sanding marks and scratches, and then you got to sand it down and take it down and clean it up. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to use a Stanley number 4, number 5 hand planer, and I'm going to take that hand planer to this floor, and let me show you why. Okay, so the problem we have is that some of these, there's some high points in here, right? So I get this to go, I can try and show you here. See, there's a little bit of a lip there. Now that one's not bad. The finish can take it and fill it in. But there's another one. See them little cracks? That's going to look so nice when that's filled with epoxy. Okay, because what it does, it gives a 3D effect, right? You just don't want to see your subflooring like this one. So I've got to resolve that. I don't want to see that subflooring. That board snuck by me. Okay, so what we're looking at, I think I broke that board when I was putting it in and it splintered and popped. Anyway, you can see, well, epoxy here, right, in there. But there's a board in here. Where did it go? Bear with me. Here it is. See this one here? See how there's a lip? See the lip? So that hand planer is level here, right here. But right there to there, that's going to come down. So instead of using, like I said, a belt sander, and I got to keep sanding it, cleaning it up, I'm going to use a hand planer. Come right down here. A great idea from a gentleman online who did his floor, hand scraped it. Oh my God, what did he say? 55 gallon, or 10 55-gallon trash cans of shavings. Now look, I got some energy, but I sure as hell ain't got that kind of energy. So we ain't going to scrape this whole floor. We're just going to scrape the toe scrapers that are popping up here, right? I don't want to be walking in my floor barefoot and have it snag a piece of skin off the bottom of my foot, even with a finish on it. So that's the idea. So what else can I add in here? That's about it. That's kind of where I'm standing. If you watch other videos, I'll tell you how I got into the transition. Oh, and an update on that transition. Remember I said wish me luck? How I had to run that board, the flooring from there to there, because I had my board here sticking out, so I could measure from here to measure back the width of a bunch of boards evenly to nail my faceboard. And then I came back here, nailed my faceboard, glued and nailed it, and then started flooring this way back, right? Because you got to nail the tongues in. Man, this is going to look so nice when it's done. And then it lined up. It did. I was so happy when that lined up. And it was not too tight of a fit. A little bit tighter than I'd like, but I got that. When I came down this way, I got that last piece, because this is my measuring piece, right? My reference board. This last piece was slid in. And I explained that in the other video. It slid in, and it was a little tight, but I'm still flush. I'm not bowed, and it's nice. Oh man, I'm glad that worked out. So the reason why I do all that is because I don't want transitions, right? I explained that in the other video. So if you take a look at how this goes, my transitions, of course, I want to go to wider boards and give it a little more of a change here in the hallway. And then the living room and the rest are going to be the wider boards. But I wanted to put the smaller boards in the bedrooms because the bedrooms are smaller, right? So to me, it gives more character with a narrower board. And to me, with a narrower board makes the room look more, it gives more of a perspective to the room. If you've got really wide boards in the room, it makes the room look small, in my opinion. So if you take a look here, this is kind of where I'm at. So, highly recommend doing this if you got the time. There's the closet. Come out here. No transition. Like I said, I don't like transitions in the same species of wood. And come on, let's take a look. Walk around here, take a look. And there we are there. So, and then we come out here, we get into a wider board. Right there. So now I'm faced with another obstacle here. I may as well explain it. So going from here back into the narrow boards, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one last wider board, right? And then that'll jut out into the room a little bit, which is okay, but this is going to be easier for me to do. To have this slightly wide, you'd rather have the narrow board. But if I do the narrow board here, then it's going to cause me a hell of a lot more work, right? So, and if I notch out, there just isn't enough meat. See what I mean? Because I got to leave an expansion gap. If I do a narrow board, try and notch that out, it's just not going to be enough meat. And I don't want to glue a little tiny strip, to have a filler against the wall. So, here's the resolution. We add one more row of the wider board. This wider board will get in here, will get notched out on the side. It'll get notched, it'll be one solid board, and it'll get notched out over here. And then what I'll do is I'll rip my narrower board. I'm going to rip about an inch and a half off to give my gap. And it'll line up here, the narrow board line up here against the wall, and that's going to give me more meat. And I think that'll be a lot stronger. That's just what I'm thinking. rather than gluing a piece together, I'll have one solid piece. You see, if I go the other way, then I have to glue a narrow strip to make up the back on the wall, if that makes sense, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I don't think you'll notice it unless you're looking for it. And maybe a cabinet maker or a floor installer will notice it, but I don't think anybody else will. That the transition will have one more wider board there and then go into narrow. No big deal. It's not like you're going to be looking for it. So another thing here too, I've kind of noticed the pattern I laid down, and everything's kind of synchronistic. Bear with me. Stay out of there. I might lay a diamond in here. Now, the diamond will probably wind up being rustic. You know, in other words, I got to looking at this, and that's my center board. So if I do a diamond pattern in here, it'll be all rotten, cracked, nasty boards, but it'll be a diamond. You know, it'll be the really crappy boards that have a lot of character that I'll put in here and do a diamond. The only problem with that is I'll have to mill ends, because I'll have to find the correct length boards to make my diamond, right? And I'll have to mill some ends, so I might have to mill tongues into these, which is no big deal. I can do it on the saw, table saw. And I think I'm probably going to wind up doing that. We'll see. So that'll give me, if you look here, that'll give me a diamond pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Center. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I'm going to do, because then they'll leave me one board on either side. So I'm going to do a diamond in here. It'll just be really rustic. I mean, I think it'll look cool. I kept looking at this going, why is this coming out this way? It just come out perfect, right? I go, if I were to measure that, they'd all be pretty darn close. So I think that's what's going to happen. So I'll keep you posted. I'm just rambling, trying to buy time to see if I haven't forgot anything. Oh, when you're using your air nailer, I highly recommend that you go down and get yourself a rubber hose. These vinyl hoses will do nothing but get under your feet. They don't stay in one location, and they wind up just being a pain. So get a rubber hose and then get one of these swivels. So what happens is this will hook up to your tool and it'll allow you to have a little wiggle room, right? So there it is. Anything else I can think of? Well, if you got any questions, drop a comment. I don't do this for a living. I've done it before. So any questions you got, I do my best to answer. And I'm not afraid, of sharing any experience or anything that I've learned from other people. And I learn a lot. I'm like a sponge. So I learn a lot from other people over the years. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. So there it is. I'll keep you posted, and let's do one more walkthrough. We'll start here. The hallway will run in here so you can see. So coming in from here. On the transition here, I didn't want nails in my transition. That's glued down with flooring adhesive. And Corlux reclaimed barn board. Lumber Liquidators number 3, mixed red and white oak. 2 different sizes of boards. I think it's 2.5 and 3.5. Don't quote me on that. Oh, I can't wait. Look at that. I can't wait till there's a finish on this floor. Man, this floor is going to pop. It's going to look nice. It's going to be nice. Look at this. Wham. And it's nighttime. You imagine when the sun's shining and it hits that floor. You'll see. All right. Have a good night or day. Over now.